Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be making cider with some apples that I've just harvested from my apple tree. So today I'm going to be using the apples that I've just harvested from my apple tree to make some cider. I've actually got two apple trees here in the garden and that's where these apples came from. I've got two apple trees at my allotment plot as well, so luckily I've got lots of apples to make lots of cider, but these are the ones I'm going to be using today. I'm not sure of the varieties of these apples because the apple trees were actually here when we moved in, but they're definitely cooking apples. They're a variety that grows here in the UK and that's what I'm going to be using. So there's a few steps to making cider and I'm going to go through those steps one by one as I do them. The first thing is I'm going to be washing the apples, I'm going to be chopping the apples, I'm going to be crushing the apples, I'm going to be pressing the apples, and then I'm going to be putting them into these fermentation jars to ferment for a couple of weeks. First things first, we need to wash all of these apples. I'm just going to wash the apples in, and I'm going to have to do this as there's so many apples. I'm going to have to do this load by load, bucket by bucket. So I'm going to wash them in this bucket, and then they're going to go in here. I'm going to chop them up here, and then I'm going to put them in my apple crusher ready to be crushed. So I've got apples growing on a tree, so they're the ones that I use. I've got access to them in my garden and at my allotment plot. But you can use apple juice if you still want to make cider. You can use apple juice from concentrate, but you can still do that. Or you can go apple picking at an orchard. So there's many ways you can still make cider even if you haven't got your own apple tree. So now all of the apples are washed. I'm just going to chop them up into smaller pieces so it's a bit easier for the crusher to crush them. And if I see any bits that don't look too good, I'll just cut them off. But to be honest, it doesn't really matter because they're all going to be crushed and then they're going to be pressed anyway. So my first lot of apples are now washed and chopped, and I'm going to start crushing them. So I've now crushed a huge amount of the apples. As you can see, I've still got a huge amount of apples left, but I've managed to crush all of these. So I'm going to put these into the fruit press and see what comes out the other side. So I'm just going to use my hands just to get this all inside. I'm going to get as much in as I possibly can. So I've just put the apples into the press and already you can see that the juice is coming out already. So now I'm going to press this. I'm going to use the 2 blocks and the winding mechanism to push all of this down and get as much juice as possible from the bottom here. So I'm just going to fold this net inside and push that down a little bit. And I'm going to use these 2 half blocks to put inside there, and that's what's going to push all that fruit down. So I've got 2 blocks here. I'm going to put them upright just so that I've got less to wind down. Pop that on top, put that rubber on top, then I've got the top to just twist on top. So I'm just going to twist this. It does come with a pole, but at the moment it's quite easy just to twist it. So I'm going to do that, and I can see there's lots and lots of juice coming out of there already into the pot below. Very satisfying. I'm getting a whole load of juice now from these apples. So I've just changed my jugs over and I'm just going to start pouring these into the bottles I've got, and this is what the apple juice is going to ferment into to make our cider. So I'm just going to pour it into this funnel, it's going to go into these large bottles underneath, and then we're going to leave them for a good couple of weeks. Okay, so that is now right to the very bottom and I've got the last drips out. So I still need to press all of this that I've already crushed. So I'm just going to change this bag over. With the pulp that's left, I'm just going to add that to my compost. I think if you've got chickens or any animals that would enjoy it, you can do that as well. It's going to be added to my compost. Okay, so that's filled up again. So I'm just going to go through the exact same process with this one and then hopefully fill up my bottle. Okay, so I've now finished bottling up my first bottle of the apple juice, which will hopefully turn into cider. So there's a few things I need to do before I let this ferment. I could let it ferment on its own because apples do contain yeast anyway, but you're not guaranteed for it to actually not ruin. That way the yeast speeds it up. So I am going to be adding yeast, but before I do that, I'm going to be using this hydrometer to measure the potential alcohol volume in the apple juice that we've just pressed. The hydrometer I've got is for cider and it has the potential alcohol volume on the reading. Other hydrometers may give you a reading that shows the gravity, and with those you need to work out the potential alcohol volume from that reading. So I'm going to pour the apple juice into this tube. I'm going to put the hydrometer in, and that will give us a reading, which it is doing now. And if you look at that, it's giving a reading of just over 5% alcohol volume. So the reason that we do this reading now is to find out how much sugar is in the apple juice, because that determines the alcohol volume. So if this wasn't where it wanted to be sugar-wise and it wasn't showing 5%, we could add sugar at this point. So now for the fun part is adding the yeast. So I have actually got some cider yeast that I'm going to be using. I'm going to add half a packet to this bottle. And I'm just going to give that a little bit of a stir with a chopstick. And I'm going to give it a bit of a swish around. Just to get all that yeast mixed in to the apple juice. So now the yeast is inside my apple juice, inside the bottle. I'm just going to put this lid on. This is an airlock, so it doesn't let anything in, like any fruit flies or any bacteria we don't want in there, but it just lets the CO2 out. So this will bubble and release as it ferments. So that is our cider all ready to ferment. I'm going to keep that probably under the stairs for a couple of weeks and check on its progress. And then I will come back to you in a later video where I'm going to do some more readings on it to check the alcohol content and bottle it up ready for consumption. Let me know if you've made cider before, if you're thinking of making cider, what results you've had, what you do with your apples. I'd really like to know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you again soon.